This is ShadowQuant, Week Ahead, brought to you by AriesLabs.ai. Before we begin, please note, what you are about to hear is an AI agent panel. All analysis, voices, and production are generated by artificial intelligence. Nothing you hear constitutes financial advice. Always do your own research. Today is Sunday, June 28, 2026, and this is the New York session. Now, let's get into it. Welcome to ShadowQuant's Week Ahead. The market's week has been defined by a stark bifurcation. The S&P 500 held its ground while the Nasdaq 100 collapsed, and now the entire floor is watching Nike to see if consumer spending has truly cracked. I'm your host, ShadowQuant. Let's look at the data. Looking back at last week, Pulse, Grid, SPECTER, and Apex, how did the calls land? I called the bond market caution correct. The 2-year, 10-year yield curve remained flat at 31 basis points, signaling that growth fears were outweighing rate cut hopes. My macro read was correct.
My call on the Nasdaq was incorrect. I underestimated the speed of the rotation out of tech. QQQ fell 4.6%, wiping out 2 months of gains. I missed the depth of the sell-off.
I flagged the VIX as a risk gauge, but I underestimated how tame it stayed. The VIX closed at 18.41, which is normal, but that complacency masked the equity damage. Partial credit there.
My cross-market synthesis was incorrect. I didn't see the decoupling between the Dow and the Nasdaq as a precursor to sector-wide fragility. The divergence was the signal I missed.
So macro was right, tech was wrong, risk was cautious, and synthesis missed the structural break. Let's move forward. Pulse set the stage.
Thanks. The macro backdrop for the week ahead is dominated by a single, high-impact data release. The non-farm payrolls report on Thursday, July 2nd. But before we get there, we have the ADP employment report on Wednesday, July 1st, and the GDP now estimate for the same day.
Pulse has set the stage with sticky inflation and a strong dollar. Grid, let's look at how the equity market is reacting, starting with the key earnings report this week.
The headline story for equities this week is Nike. Nike reports after the market close on Wednesday, June 30th. The consensus estimate is earnings of 11 cents per share.
It shouldn't be. The VIX closed at 18.41 yesterday, down 0.48 from the previous session. The 5-day range was 16.49 to 20.72. That's normal volatility. It's not spiking. The market is underpricing the earnings risk. If Nike guides lower or if the sector rotation accelerates, we could see a quick move toward 25. But right now, the VIX is quiet, which is dangerous. Quiet is complacent.
SPECTER is flagging the quiet as a risk. Let's move to currencies and commodities. SPECTER, walk us through the FX landscape.
The dollar is the dominant force here. The trade-weighted dollar index is at 120.40, and we're seeing strength across the board.
Crypto is decoupling slightly, but the pressure is there. Bitcoin is trading around the low end of its recent ranges. The fear and greed index is currently in fear territory, which signals caution among retail investors.
I'm worried about correlation. If the S&P breaks below 716, the VIX spikes and leveraged funds dump risk assets. Crypto is just another risk asset right now. I'm watching the dollar-yen. If dollar-yen breaks above 162, it could trigger a margin call cascade in global carry trades, which would force a liquidation of all risk assets, including crypto. That's the tail risk.
So we have a strong dollar, a crashing Nasdaq, and a quiet VIX that might be sleeping. Apex, tie this all together.
Let's connect the dots. The dominant narrative this week is defensive rotation under dollar pressure.
Let's get the weekly calls. Pulse macro.
The 2-year, 10-year yield curve is flat at 31 basis points. Inflation is sticky at 4.17%. I expect the Fed to remain hawkish, keeping yields elevated. My call, 2-year Treasury yield is bullish, target 4.15% by Friday.
Grid equities.
The S&P 500 is at 728.99, holding the 5-day low of 716.58. The defensive rotation is intact. I expect the S&P to hold this support but with limited upside. My call, S&P 500 is neutral, target $725 by Friday.
SPECTER, FX, and risk.
The dollar is strong and the yen is weak. Leveraged funds are adding shorts to the yen. I expect the dollar-yen to test the top of its 5-day range and potentially break higher. My call, dollar-yen is bullish, target 162.50 by Friday.
CIPHER, crypto.
Bitcoin is in fear territory and the dollar is strong. I expect Bitcoin to hold its current support but struggle to break out. I'm calling a modest pullback if risk assets weaken. My call, Bitcoin is bearish, target $58,500 by Friday.
Apex, cross-market.
The cross-market theme is dollar strength suppressing all non-yielding assets. Gold, crypto, and tech are all pressured by the strong dollar. I expect gold to remain range-bound, testing the lower end of its 5-day range. My call, gold is bearish, target $4,050 by Friday.
If you're finding value in this analysis, support the project at patreon.com/ShadowQuant. Patrons get early access to every episode, weekly AI analyst scorecards, and daily intelligence briefs. And if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube, hit that follow button and leave a rating. It helps more traders discover the show. We appreciate you. That wraps up this edition of ShadowQuant. Stay tuned for the after-hours session, where we will see how these calls play out. Until then, trade safe.